Hey buddies, welcome to AmassGames. My name is Simon and today I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about the history of board games. There's a lot to discuss and there has been a lot of interest in board games recently, this decade, this millennium in fact, and that's mainly been about due to a number of reasons. One of them of course is around how good designer modern board games are, and if you are somebody who's familiar with that, this might be of interest to you. If you're brand new to knowing about the history of board games and actually how they developed, this might of course be interesting to you as well. So let's talk back with the beginning, the oldest, I guess, thing you can do as a pastime to do with board games. And those two games, Senet and the Royal Game of pronounced and spelt UR. That's uniform with Romeo. Okay, so those are two of the original games, and if you're interested in those kind of games, you can of course play them online. They're in the public domain. And moving forward a little bit from that period in time whereby you could have dice and different things which involves chance, luck and strategy, there are a number of other games that came around such as backgammon, which is very popular particularly in the Middle East presently, especially in places like Turkey. And I will talk to you a little bit about why I think games have moved on from places like that. Well, there's lots written about the game of backgammon. But moving on to another game since then, there is the game called Hannurtaffle. And let me show you what it looks like. The Viking game from 450. It's a game that I absolutely love. I love it to pieces. It is an asymmetrical game as well, an abstract strategy, two-player game. And what's good about it, and I'll talk about some others in this kind of genre, is it's a combinatorial game. This means that there's no luck involved, so you don't have to worry about anything you do may be a mistake. You're purely worrying about your opponent making a mistake. However, for some people, they might not like such a game. The reason being is suddenly you have a better player, and if you don't know how good they are, then you may, of course, get beaten because you're not used to that. Additionally, there can be downtime when somebody's thinking. Moving on from that, there is another game from 1150 approximately, and in 1150 the game of Draft or Checkers came out. Now this is just a checkerboard, and I'll talk to you another game straight afterwards. The reason why this is popular, because it involves hopping around and stuff like that, which many people like. This is a magnetic set, so I won't be opening it. And another game that superseded it in around 1450, so that's 1450, is the game of chess. An excellent game, very thematic as well, in my opinion at least, using these horsemen and people like that, who's knights and then kings and queens, to move around a board to obviously look into defense, look into attack, and look into control. A typical game is around 20 minutes, and lots of people have taken 5+ hours. I've been in very long games. I generally take a quick move and wait and think on my opponent's turn. Again, the downside is, as it's purely strategy, you are now down to obviously however good your opponent is and how good they are, and therefore you might want to have a chess clock to see how long it takes. Personally, I don't like chess clocks. The advantage of chess clocks, of course, is when they run out of time, the game ends, but I don't like that additional pressure if necessary. Now I'm jumping up a massive step forward here, and this is around the time of the Depression. This is around 1930 over in America, and of course in the UK and around the world. And just prior to that, a game called The Landlord's Game came out. And in 1933 approximately, a game came out called Monopoly. Now Monopoly was very interesting because it had set collection involved with it, had chance, it had luck. And in terms of that luck, you're rolling a die, a roll and move category of games, which is generally highly frowned upon because it's completely luck-based to where you end up. You're looking to ultimately eliminate other players until you're the last one left, so thematically it works strongly. The downside is someone could be eliminated and they're waiting 5+ hours for it to end because they've got nothing else to do in the game. Also, like I said, being eliminated, not only are you out the game, I've talked about 6 hours. Yes, I've played numerous 6-hour games of it. Now, it also has paper money, which some people might find it burr and rip and whatever. Personally, I've never had any problems with any paper money in any game, but I can understand having a nice poker chip kind of weight style of currency is very nice markers. I have been to Hasbro's headquarters, who own the rights to the game, and I have explained to them that having a time pile, a set of cards for community chess as an example, or chance, when they run out, their game ends. In this instance, you can see how far through the deck it is, and therefore make a decision. Now, moving on from Monopoly, the reason why it's sustained and people still talk about it today is talk about the Depression, talk about after the Second World War in particular. Suddenly, people are having this game, they have a little bit of money, they're able to get at least one game, and they're sitting around. Maybe there isn't much on TV, or not many people have TVs, so they're able to play this game a lot. And because it passes down to generations, I've still got very old sets, or at least my parents do. And in this instance, when you have something like this, it's something they relate to. Why do they need to talk about other games? Chess, of course, is one of them, but as a family game, you'll need more people. Obviously, Monopoly handles up to 6. Now, moving on from that, there's another game I want to talk to you about, and that's Acquire, that came out in the 60s by Sid Saxon, and a prolific designer. He's also made a game in 1980 called Can't Stop, an excellent use of dice as a different way of actually approaching the idea of board games and the way of using chance and strategy. This leads me on to how the modern board game came around, and that was in 1978, 1979, when the Spiel.digital invented this idea of actually saying, we want you to win categories of obviously board games to be obviously successful. The reason behind that is actually by winning the award or even being nominated alleviates you or gets you up from, say, 1,500 copies sold, elevates you from that, so maybe 10,000 to beyond, to winning the award, to winning, you could be up to getting 30 million copies sold. Now, I'll talk to you a little about some of the big winners of that category, but what are the ideas behind the category? Well, like I said, it's trying to encourage better, obviously, games, better gameplay, and better design. And it's very similar, you might say, to maybe the Academy Awards with films, and obviously trying to strive for best. So the four major things to do with the Spiel.digital over in Germany, the game of the year, relate to fun. It has to be fun, it has to be easy to teach, it has to be highly replayable, and ideally quite easy in terms of interactivity between the players as well. And generally not too long, we're talking under an hour typically. Now, I have played numerous of those Spiel.digitals. Some of them I agree with, some of them I still own, some of them I don't. But the first one that won it was Hase und Igel, otherwise known as Hare and Tortoise. I have, as you can see, I've got the German edition. I have played the UK edition as well. There are many other games out there which have won the award, which I recommend, and it does cost you money to have this, this pawn here with the laurel leaves on there as well. So I have played numerous games in that series, and I can do a separate video. You can check out my playlist channel on Spiel.digital, and you can see various games on there that, of course, I do talk about. 1983 had the Scotland Yard game, which involving hidden movement, and you're working as a team against someone else, against Mr. X. And there are other games from 1988. We have Out of Shot presently, we have Alpha Axa as well, amongst others. Now, the big change from these Spiel.digital came in 1995 with Klaus Teuber's game, and there are other games by Klaus Teuber on the channel as well called Catan. That's how it's currently known, also known as Settlers, or the Settlers for Catan, or Settlers of Catan. And the reason why this has done so well partially involves the dice, involves the luck, involves a few other categories. It's a 3 to 4 player game, and involves, amongst other things, negotiation using cards. It has what's known as 3X, and there's also 4X, which is about expand, explore, exploit, and exterminate. Extermination, player elimination, is not included in this game, but you can definitely be trapped off and can have a bad game. Now, moving on from that again, we've talked about asymmetry. There are some other games that have come around which do that very well, including at multiple player counts. The game of Root. Also, Kickstarter, you can now get better boards, things which stop things from falling out, so that's rather nice if you can see the differences going on there. You also have other things, so there's a few things like Pandemic, an excellent cooperative game. So cooperative games typically came around from Rainer Knizia. Dr. Rainer Knizia has made over 600 board games, and one in particular, The Lord of the Rings from the year 2000, actually has art that was based on the concept art used for the films The Lord of the Rings. So we have books. You can have books and stuff like that as well. That's awesome. Pandemic. You can also have sequels. So you can have sequels to, for example, Pandemic. So you can have different things going on there. You can have, say, World of Warcraft, which is, of course, a different intellectual property. And there's another thing which I'm a big fan of, which is legacy games. Now, I happen to be talking about Pandemic currently. Yes, a game that you can play multiple times and things change. Now, I talked about Kickstarter. Yes, you can have games on Kickstarter, things that may not normally have appeared there. And those are other things you may want to, of course, be familiar with, because there's a massive market out there whereby games are not getting made until, of course, people even hear about them. So why am I talking about all this stuff? Well, of course, lots of different games are coming out every single year, over 5,000 in the United States alone. There are many people who talk about board games. Of course, we have the proliferation of YouTube, the option for, of course, people to discover more things. I've hopefully found this of interest. Again, this has been a very quick run through, briefly taking you right the way through history with some massive gaps, but hopefully this is something whereby it's of interest. You might want to share, like. If you want to see other stuff, of course, subscribe, and of course, hit the notification bell. Check out the comments and descriptions. Of course, let me know your thoughts. I reply quickly. Hopefully it's all positive, but of course, if there's other stuff you want me to mention, a bit more in detail, I'm more than happy to. I just felt it was really interesting to share with you the kind of stuff that I tell so many non-board gamers as well. There are apparently 7 million people every day in the UK playing, and it's something I find of interest. It's around a £2 billion hobby, from what I last noticed, and it's something that I like to share and a champion. I tend to play every day, as you may have already noticed, around 364 days last year, and it's something which, again, I find immensely enjoyable, takes me away from the screen. So without further ado, I'll leave you to it and speak to you soon.